7 rules to create great leaders in your team. Today I want to give you these 7 rules around creating great leaders in your team, and I truly believe these can help you. I remember for me when I started leading a team, and my initial approach really was to think, if I can just do the best I can, if I can just do my very best, then and grow in all of my different leadership skills. If I can grow in my competency to do what I'm meant to be doing here, then everyone will just follow me. And I look back and I now view that as a really naive perspective if I look back at myself. And I also see how I didn't get the best out of anyone in my team when I was thinking like that. The big shift for me happened when I realized, wait a second, the biggest thing I can do to invest in the mission and the vision of my wider team, of my organization, is to raise great leaders. And so these 7 rules are all about raising and developing great leaders. So rule number 1 is the who. Rule number 1 is the who, and a really easy way to look at this is Patrick Lencioni's book, The Ideal Team Player. I use the Ideal Team Player all the time for clarity and for any clients I help with their HR. And the 3 traits in the Ideal Team Player are humble. How humble is someone? Hungry. How hungry are they? How, do they go above and beyond? And smart, as Lencioni calls it. I think of it as people smart. He also calls it that. Like emotional intelligence, or another way he puts it is, when they're in a room with a bunch of people, they are aware if they're offending someone. If someone's not aware of that, then what they end up doing, what you'll end up finding is that person will end up making a lot of messes. It's not something they can't grow in, but the first thing about really, in terms of rules for great team, like really developing great leaders in your organization, in your team, is about this idea of who. Look at who they are and start with the 3 traits. The second thing I'd say is to have a conversation. The second rule of developing great leaders is to have a conversation. Let me put it this way. When was the last time you sat down with some of the key people in your team and had a conversation with them about the future? And the easiest thing you could do, if I was going to give you one tip around this rule, is to speak vision over them. What do you see in their life? What do you see that they're extraordinarily gifted at? Have you told them that? If you imagine what they might be doing in 20 years, just for a second, stop and think of one of the leaders in your team. And I want you to think, what might that person be doing in 20 years? Just give yourself a few seconds. Whether it's John or Nancy or whoever it is in your team, what might they be doing in 20 years? One of the things you can do is, in this conversation with them, is say to them, hey, you know what, Nancy, I see, like, one thing that comes to mind for me when I work with you is I see the potential you have. In my mind, I see down the track, I maybe sitting on boards. You're so strategic with how you think. Definitely being an instrumental person in governance and sitting on boards and executive teams at a higher level than what we're doing here. And that's a great place to start. The third thing I'd say, the third rule for raising great leaders, is the square of delegated responsibility. I can't remember where this comes from. You'll have to Google that, and I do want to honor them. It's not my idea. The square of delegated responsibility starts here. So if we go through the square, up here is where we say to someone, when it comes to delegation, if you want to invest in your people, stop thinking about delegation as a black or white, am I or am I not doing it? Think of it as the 4 points of the square of delegated responsibility. You watch, I do. This can be really easily started with a conversation where you say, hey, initially, why don't you just watch how I lead team meetings? Why don't you watch how I manage this key account? Why don't you come to meetings and just watch? Why don't you watch how I navigate, this upcoming workshop I've got to do with some stakeholders? So you just get them to watch. And so it's I do, you watch, and then it's I do, you help. So that's where you invite them and say, come and start helping me. And then it's I help, you do. So now there's a big change through here. This is where we're saying, I actually want you to do it now, but I'm going to be there to help you. And then once they're really competent, then over here it says, you know what, you're flying with this. I think you can actually do this. I'll still be here for accountability. If you're the direct report, and KPIs, and we can talk about that. But off you go. I'll be watching from afar. You can roll with this now. So that's a great way to think about delegation. The fourth thing when it comes to rules of investing with people in your team is to connect with them. There's a wonderful framework from a psychiatrist based here in Brisbane, Dr. John Warlow, and he talks about this idea of the CURE framework. And CURE stands for connect, understand, respond, engage. Connect, understand, respond, engage. What do we do as leaders? We focus in on engaging. We say, I need to engage people. I need to get better engagement with my team, with my stakeholders. So if you're looking at raising leaders in your team, go back a few steps. And instead of starting by thinking about how they're engaging with you, come back to connect, understand, respond, engage. But start with connect. The beautiful thing about connecting is it changes your goals. It's not about getting them, to go to another level as a leader. It takes it right back to how can I spend 5 minutes with them? What might it look like this week for me to check in with them and spend a bit of time with them? It's things like giving them a quick phone call after they've done an important task and saying, hey, how'd you go? How'd you find it? It's things like checking in with them and not asking about work when something important happens, anniversary in their life or something important in their kids' lives, and you say, hey, how was that? You mentioned there was a really important soccer match coming up. How did that go? Was that on the weekend? Yeah. And you don't ask about work. You just connect. And the easiest way to connect is to spend time with people. There's a great saying that I heard from a friend of mine, which I can't remember once again where this comes from, but do want to give honor where that's due. But he said, when it comes to parenting, and I believe it's the same thing with connecting with anyone, but parenting, love is spelt Time. And when it comes to leadership and raising great leaders is spelt Time. If you want to care, if you're going, how can I be more caring, compassionate, empathetic? Well, all those things are spelt Time. Spend time with your people, not just about work. Get in the trenches with them. And as someone said to me the other day, we talk about an open door policy. And they were saying, but what is this thing about open doors? The question isn't, do you have an open door? The question is, do your people feel like they can come through that door anytime? There's a difference. And if you want to build that and you want to raise great leaders in your team, then have an open door policy. But the real type of open door policy where it's not just a physically open door, but where you've got people coming to you and knowing it's safe and they feel like they can come and talk to you about anything. And the only way you're going to do that is by going to them first. That's the fourth thing, connecting. The fifth thing I would say, and this might sound a little bit counterintuitive, but if you want to raise great leaders in your team, then one of the best things you can do is to get your leaders to raise great leaders in their teams. If you want to raise great leaders in your team, get your leaders to raise great leaders in their team. Why do I say that? Because when it comes to great leadership, great leaders invest in people and raise leaders. So what we're really talking about is one of the core pillars of great leadership. And so if you want to raise great leaders, teach them one of the core pillars. Make it a KPI. Make it important that all of our team, obviously this is more focused on where you have people in your team who are leading people. Sometimes you will have a team where the people in your team are more doing the work and you're the person leading people. It's a bit different. But if you're in a situation where you do have people in your team who are also leading other people in some form, then invest in them and teach them how to start raising great leaders. Teach them about the things I'm talking about here, about what to look for in the people on their team, about how to delegate, all these things. Firstly, what that will do is it'll make you better at it, because the best way to learn is to teach. There's nothing like trying to train someone else to do something that gets you to question how you're doing it and takes you to another level. And by them starting to actually do that for their people, you're going to make them a better leader automatically, just by getting them to start having these conversations, because eventually they're going to be in a role like yours and they're going to need to know this stuff. And so why don't you start helping the people on your team to start actually raise great leaders in their teams? Rule number 6, when it comes to raising great leaders and developing great leaders in your team and in your organization, is to watch what you walk past. Watch what you walk past. Let me put that in a question. What have you walked past in the past month? What have you walked past recently that was actually something really important in terms of values and behaviors for you as a team or as an organization? And when I say walked past, you've chosen not to deal with it. And there's a saying that culture isn't just what you create. Culture is what you're willing to walk past. So you can spend all this time creating culture, but if you're willing to walk past that and not deal with it, then that is going to then that's going to be part of your culture. And so if you want to have people who are encouraging and leading others well in your team, who are following through on what they say they're going to do, then watch what you walk past. If you want to develop great leaders, and this is the other trick, which is really interesting. If you want to lose your best people, which no one does, the quickest way to do that is to tolerate poor behavior by other employees, particularly those people who are, to be really harsh, the lower performers in your organization, or the people where you go, they're just very difficult, or they're not doing well in their role. Hey, tolerate their poor behavior, particularly when it comes to core values, and your best people will leave. And we don't want that. Instead, we want the flip side. We want to help our people who are underperforming to step up or to step out and find something that is a fit for them. So that's the 6th thing. And then the 7th thing, and this is where I want to land it, is I want to encourage you. You want to develop and raise great leaders in your team, then you need to develop and raise your own leadership. Develop and raise your own leadership. When was the last time you read a leadership book? When was the last time you invested financially in your own leadership by going on a course, by having a coach? When was the last time you subscribed to some podcasts that are a bit uncomfortable for you? There's some great podcasts, Kerry Newhoff, Craig Groeschel, John Maxwell. I love the Tim Ferriss show. There's these different... my encouragement to you would be, you've got to keep learning. We talked about humility in one of those traits. You want to be a humble, hungry, people-smart leader. And one of the best ways you can do is to grow in each of those things and to grow and develop your own leadership. Because if you'll do that, if you'll grow and develop your own leadership, then there's a great quote from Brian Houston where he says, you can't change culture, you can only be culture. So don't try to change culture of the leaders necessarily. Start by being that culture. You want leaders who invest in leaders. You want leaders who follow through on what they say they're going to do. You want leaders who are disciplined in this way or that way. You want leaders who treat people like X, Y, or Z. Then start by being that leader yourself. So there's 7 rules for raising great leaders in your team, for developing great leaders in your team and organization. Go out and get started on those today. Well, I hope today's episode of the John O. White Leadership Podcast has helped you in your leadership. Just a reminder that everything we do in this podcast and at Clarity is to invest in you, is to invest in people like you to become the very best you can be, to become everything you're meant to be in order to fill the world with healthy organizations that people love to work for and customers line up to buy from. That's our heart. And if you're just joining us for the first time, then do make sure you go to consultclarity.org. That's consultclarity.org. We have so many incredible resources on there. We have the 1,500 answers. So 1,500 leaders from around the world have done the 7 questions on leadership. It's completely free to access. It's on our website. You can find it there. And their answers are so helpful. There's so much wisdom there, and I'd encourage you to do that. And the other thing I'd encourage you to do is to share your thoughts on leadership. Yes, I do believe that you have advice from your life and your experience and your context, no matter how young, how old, or what part of the world you're in and what industry you lead in, that other leaders can learn from. So if you're interested in giving back, it's free to get involved. You can fill out the 7 questions on leadership, and the starting point is just to express your interest in doing it. And you do that by going to consultclarity.org/7-questions-interest, or you can Google 7 questions interest consultclarity.org, and it'll pop up there, and there's a form for you to fill out. Another thing on our website I'd encourage you to get is our free download of the Leadership Survival Guide. It's just on the homepage, consultclarity.org, right at the top. Completely free, 57-page ebook, 10 world-class leaders give their thoughts on leadership, what they've found challenging, the book that's really been helpful for them, and a bunch of other things. So make sure you download the free Leadership Survival Guide on our website. The other thing you can do is we have a daily email that you might want to join. We have 15,000 leaders receiving that email right now. And what we put in there every day is a highlight from our content, one of our podcasts, a blog, a book, something, maybe a book we're reading. We also have in there exclusive and limited access, early access for our subscribers to our masterclasses and workshops on all topics of leadership, like work-life balance, emotional intelligence, how to coach others, a bunch of topics like that. Whenever that happens, you want to be subscribed, and you can subscribe by going to consultclarity.org/subscribe and join 15,000 other leaders. Now, my gift to you is to work incredibly hard to make this content as helpful as possible, and to invest in you. That's my gift to you. And if you've found this helpful, particularly if this has been an investment in your leadership and helped you to move forward, then your gift to me could be to write a review. That is, I can't even explain how helpful that is. It really does help us to get the word out there about our content and to invest in more leaders like you. Or give us a rating. Wherever you're watching or listening, give us a rating and make sure you subscribe or follow. Those things are super helpful. Another thing that means a lot to me personally is when I see members of our community sharing our content anywhere on social media. If you do that, hey, make sure you look for Jono White and look for Clarity and tag us. And our team is always on the lookout. When we see you share something from us, we will often engage and even potentially share your content with what you say with the rest of the community. So make sure you do that. Go and share it on social media. We'll be watching for that. That's another way you can really help us out. Last of all is my book, Step Up or Step Out. If you're a leader and you are finding it challenging to deal with someone because you're finding it difficult, you're just on different wavelengths, then check out my book, Step Up or Step Out, How to Deal with Difficult People Even If You Hate Conflict. It's available on Amazon. You can look up Step Up or Step Out Jono White, or go to store.consultclarity.org/book. I really believe that from 50% of my coaching sessions, this topic has come up again and again, and that's why I believe so deeply in the 3-step process I go through in Step Up or Step Out. Leaders say, Jono, I'm so sick of not knowing how to deal with this. I don't want it to all blow up. What do I do? That's why I wrote Step Up or Step Out, and I really hope that can help you. So go and check out my book. And thank you so much for listening. We're going to be back with a new episode of the Jono White Leadership Podcast next time. I hope today has helped you take another step towards becoming the very best leader you can be, and ultimately becoming everything I believe you're meant to be. We'll see you next time.